Okay, everybody comfortable? Cell phones off, right? Okay, here we go.
From Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the palatial FYC studios, you're listening to All Things Considered,
the podcast where we ask you to consider all things as opposed to bringing you a single classic for your consideration. I'm your host, Dustin Friesman.
And I'm your host, Mike Josic. We'd like to say hello to everybody catching the show on iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and if you're streaming or downloading the show off of iTunes, while you're there, we'd love it if you took a second to rate and review the show. A 5-star review, it gets us into the algorithms of Apple's complicated system of placing and creating clicks of podcasters.
That went off the rails and just skidded and blew up, and then there was a secondary explosion.
So it would really help while you're there if you did that. That'd be cool. If you're a regular listener to the show, welcome back, and if this is your first time catching our jaunty film discussions, be warned, spoilers ahead. So if you're listening to this, you probably know what you clicked on, and that this is the 4th installment of our Summer of '89 series, which was an enterprise that we began a few weeks ago, where 30 years ago there was a series of movies that came out in the summer of '89, and it's considered by a lot of people, a lot of critics, to kind of be one of the best summers for movies ever. There were films like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, License to Kill, or was it Living Daylights? There was one Bond movie that came out, Dead Poets Society, I know I'm missing some, and the film that we are discussing today, capping off our 4-week episode series, Tim Burton's Batman.
AKA what a superhero movie looks like when it doesn't start with the origin story.
Yeah, that was something that I liked about this. Let's put a pin on that. Let's make sure we talk about that one.
So many superhero stories. It's especially Spider-Man. You go back, you see Spider-Man, every single reboot, you have the origin. Here, they touched on it, and they did so in a very nice way.
So I'm going to do the credits quickly on this so that we can get to our discussion. Batman was directed by Tim Burton, produced by John Peters and Peter Guber. The screenplay was by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron, from a story by Sam Hamm. The film starred Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, Kim Basinger, Robert Wool, Pat Hingle, Billy D. Williams, Michael Goff, and Jack Palance. Music was by Danny Elfman. Cinematography by Roger Pratt. Edited by Ray Lovejoy. Distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. And received a wide release on June 23rd, 1989. The film broke all kinds of records. It was a box office juggernaut. It was a landmark film. It launched a franchise. It is the first superhero film to really succeed after Donner's Superman, and many consider it the first superhero film since Donner's Superman to actually be worth anything.
What was there between the two?
Well, there was 3 other Superman movies.
Touché.
And critics and audiences generally liked it. Some people had some problems with it, and I think
we will get into those.
I probably would understand where they're coming from right now. But just before we get into the discussion, as I like to do, I'm just going to spotlight the media upon which we watch this film. And that would be the 2-disc special editions that were released in 2009. It was the 20th anniversary. All 4 films were actually released. They were really good sets. I think all the features and everything have been ported onto the current Blu-rays that exist. At the time, these DVDs, it was like fantastic. There were 2 discs. They had the Prince videos. They had the Susie and the Banshees and the Kiss from a Rose and like all the music stuff. Interviews with the directors and cast, documentaries, commentaries. If you like the Batman movies, these were a godsend when they showed up.
And if you like Kiss from a Rose, you will enjoy the internet version of a crazy guy playing it on the recorder poorly, and then everything goes wrong. Look it up. It is hilarious.
So I guess to stick to the tradition that we've kind of been doing for the last few weeks, I will start with my story of experiencing this movie for the first time 30 years ago. Unlike the other 3 films we've covered, I was anticipating all of them. This was possibly well, Ghostbusters was pretty huge for me too, and Indiana Jones at the time. But Batman was kind of special because those were sequels and this was a movie that hadn't existed. We were getting something kind of brand new. It wasn't a sequel. All the other ones were sequels.
The only media you had before this was comics and Adam West.
Exactly. And at that time, the kitschy 66 Batman show was not viewed as fun and self-parodying and, playful and all that stuff. It was like, oh my God, we are so embarrassed of this. This was a world, we're a few years out from Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen and Elektra Assassin and Moonshadow and, all these like really mature, a lot of them dark, a lot of them gritty, a lot of them violent comic books. So the Adam West Batman with the goofy costumes, and that was just like, don't even talk about it. Killing Joke was huge before this movie came out. So all the other ones I saw on the opening night, this one, I was actually barred from seeing this on opening night. My father, this was the last movie before I was going on a summer trip to Europe with my family. And my dad was weirded out by how excited I was for this movie. He was like, no human being should be this excited over a movie. So he banned me. He actually barred me from going to see this on opening night. It was a bitter resentment I held for probably a decade after the fact. I saw it on the second night. I remember I went with my friend Doug Sider. He was one of my best friends at the time. And the place was so packed. And I was actually kind of a dick about it because I just wanted to see the movie. I wanted a good seat. And I ended up not sitting with Doug and just kind of making Doug take the seat in front of me or something. And I kind of made friends with the guy sitting in the seat beside me. I was hyped. And, maybe my dad was right because I was too excited. But I remember the movie just being amazing. I honestly don't remember how many times I saw it.
But I can say this. Now your dad is dead, and is that a coincidence?
My dad isn't dead.
It was a 50-50 shot. He was alive or dead. Honestly, your dad might well be younger than mine.
So this movie was...
You haven't spoken to your dad since? Maybe?
This movie was everything. It was everything for superhero movies for a long time. Leading up to Batman Returns. It influenced the comic books. It influenced the culture. The Prince soundtrack was all over the place. I bought like the Bat Can. I mean, bat crazy. Everything was bat crazy. Everybody was in love with Batman. Looking back on it now, watching it with you, I've seen this movie a few times in the last few years. And every time has been maybe I will like it better if I try it again. Maybe I'm just not in the right mood because somewhere in the last 30 years, maybe it's because our vocabulary is so much more sophisticated. Maybe it's because... Well, no, I can't even say that because I love watching the old 60s Batman, but this one, I love things about it. I love the art design. I love the props. I love the costumes. I love the actors they chose. I love
even the fun bat costume that he couldn't move in.
I love that bat costume. I love it because of its limitations and the fact that it's literally like this hard plastic mold that I think they just poured Michael Keaton to every day.
They do very good at hiding that fact, but I knew about it, so I was looking at it, and every now and then I'd see like in the mouth hole or in the eye holes just how thick that rubber was. And
it's like 4 inches thick.
Could you not do it 2 inches thinner? Like what was the problem here?
And that was, everything was groundbreaking. Anton Furst's production design. Peter Young was the other person working on the art direction. Danny Elfman's score was crazy. It was monumental. There's so many good lines and performances, but somehow over the years, it's tarnished. The film as a whole is tarnished.
And you don't have any Silvo to rub on it.
I don't. And I keep revisiting it, and I keep getting bored. And I keep coming back. The movie pulls me back in, but while I'm watching it, I totally zone out during certain moments. There's some weird, choppy editing. They're very clearly trying to parallel the birth of the Joker and Batman's existence and the fact that they're both crazy and they're both enacting their crazy in their own particular ways. The Joker has no barriers. Batman is all barriers, although he's working outside the law. But they're both crazy, and there's that great line where Vicky Vale says, some people say you're psychotic, and he's like, what people?
I'll kill him.
This was the first time that somebody did the superhero voice, where it was like, you know what, I'm going to talk in a different voice because otherwise people might recognize me. There's some amazing, amazing, amazing stuff in this movie, but it's like it just doesn't hold together. And Batman Returns is a much crazier, more schizophrenic film than this movie. This movie is a very linear, here you go, whereas Batman Returns is like episodes and vignettes and things just sort of circuitously working their way towards the ending. But I enjoy that film so much more. And that's kind of where I am at this moment. How about you, Dustin? You said you've been wanting to revisit this for like a decade. How did it...
I have been. I remember seeing it when I was like 12 or something like that, and that's about it. And revisiting it now, I think I enjoyed it more than you did, that's for sure. I remember about halfway, 45 minutes in, you were asking about the pacing, and I didn't feel too bad about the pacing until the last half of the film, where it's like, wow, the pacing is so much better now than it was earlier. And there's a few weird moments, like Jack Nicholson as the Joker there, he's just sitting there, and it's like they stayed on him for a little bit long, and he didn't know what to do, and he just made a weird sound, and then just laughed at himself, and I'm like, why is that still here? We should have cut away like 10 seconds ago. It's like the end of The Graduate here all of a sudden, where just people are getting confused and awkward and just doing whatever.
And those moments played really well in '89. Like, I know myself and my friends, we loved those little affectations that Jack Nicholson put on.
A lot of the stuff he did was great, but just that one particular one stood out to me.
But even that one
Everything
where he's sitting in the room and Jerry Hall walks in and he's like, "Hi, honey, you'll never believe what happened to me today," and she faints. That scene really has no purpose other than to just show you, I guess, the new Joker costume.
But I think it worked, even though it was sort of showing not just the Joker costume, but that she's still sort of with him, or at least around him. I liked his brand of crazy in this one, that he was trying to modify culture on sort of our visual level.
He was a fully functioning homicidal artist.
Yes. And it's actually still relevant today, more so if anything, with the plastic surgery that everybody seems to have these days. One thing that I've noticed watching films from, especially before the 80s, chest sizes of women. Like, nobody's that flat anymore, and it's something that's extremely noticeable, and I feel is really telling of us as a society. I feel it's really problematic, because it's not normal. But then I've also found in this film that they went a little far when he poisoned all the makeup and beauty products, and so everyone stopped wearing them. And I appreciated that. And there's some people who look normal without it, but the newscasters, they put on the ugly makeup, and I was like, okay, we're going a little too far now.
It's a very theatrical film. It's a very theatrical setup, the staging of it, the fact that all of these sets were built, and that even though they're huge, it's like several city blocks that they built of Gotham. There's only so much you have to work with when you're driving around and stuff, so you see the same signs. You pass by the Monarch Theater a lot. There's, the City Hall steps and whatnot. And
I didn't even notice.
The rooms are fairly expansive, and I think they use a lot of on-set audio because you hear the echoes and stuff. There's a hollowness to some of the dialogue, and then there's like the really weird sound effects, like the punching sound effects, and the gunshots are all really like old school. And I kind of want to do a bit of a deep dive and find out if that sound design was intentional on Burton's part, or if that's just kind of like what they had on hand in the Warner Brothers library. Because even though this movie had like a $35 million budget, I think they were still working in a fairly tight budgetary environment as far as like what they could spend on and what they had to work with. They did amazing things, but this movie, it moves theatrically, and it feels staged theatrically and acted theatrically, and the scenes, they're put in front of you more so than they flow into each other in a way. And Dustin's giving me his look.
I can't say that I really noticed that quality, is what the look is sort of about there.
Fair enough. This is actually what I was excited to get into about this movie. It was either going to be, oh, I've realized how crazy I've been for years, and this movie's absolutely amazing. I love it even more than I did 30 years ago. Or I was going to feel exactly the way I felt previously, and you were going to have a different reaction, and we'd be able to kind of like massage some of these ideas out. And, you know, seeing that you did not see the same kind of staging that I did is really interesting to me.
Some of the things that I did see were a lot of similarities to Metropolis, just in the stage design. Everything looked like it was almost in a big cave, which when you say that it's in a big sound studio, well, that makes sense. But just the way the signs were sort of overtaking the road, and the special effects, they had a lot of sort of the same inklings of Metropolis, so that's sort of where my mind went to.
It was very much, that was purposeful. Burton and First, and I believe the other guy's name is in. I should Google it before I say it again, but First, Peter Young and Tim Burton, like the whole art direction of the movie. Metropolis was a huge influence. That German expressionist filmmaking was a huge influence. Fritz Lang, they wanted like a Fritz Lang Gotham.
And I'll always say that it's insane that at this point they didn't even have like a proper Metropolis version. The fact that that film was able to be as popular as it was with half of it cut out and in the wrong order. Anywho,
I did say to you, we talked about this during the watching of the movie. When we watched Metropolis, that was the first time that both of us had seen it, and we're watching the ending, and I'm like, hey, this reminds me of Batman. They're up on the roof of a church, and he's dragged the girl up there and waiting for the hero to come save them. I'm like, this is the fucking end of Batman, 1989, Tim Burton. And you're like, oh, well, we should check that movie out. And that's totally how this movie ends.
It is. And speaking of just Batman, let's talk about the Batman version we got going on here. Val Kilmer is a great Batman. The song Everyday Ordinary Guy by John LaJoie, where he's talking about how Val Kilmer was his favorite Batman, there's a good reason for it.
Val was a very physical, very acrobatic. There's a lot of movement to his Batman. It was pretty good.
And I liked his Bruce Wayne, how he was sort of snarky and a little bit reserved. And at times he showed some of that aggression. It wasn't a complete duality.
You saw the struggle.
The thing that I didn't actually like that you did was Alfred. Alfred, to me, in this one, like when he's at the party and anytime the one reporter was dropping something and Alfred picked it up right away, I was like, he is spot on. He is good. He is a great butler. But then the rest of the time, most of his dialogue is him being like just the annoyed parent with the 40-year-old still living in the basement. Like,
that's Batman.
When are you going to hook up with that nice lady? Just hook up with her, tell her the truth, and move the hell out because me and the girlfriend are hoping to walk around naked, for fuck's sake. Get out of my house already. Not that I don't love you. That's sort of how he read to me.
I liked the relationship that they had. It's one of the strengths of the movie. I said there's a lot of stuff I like about it, and a lot of the performances and a lot of the dialogue. Alfred and Bruce. Like, Bruce has this scatterbrain kind of approach to his character and his dialogue where he's got like a million things going on, and, you know, Allie Knox mentions, oh, hey, hi, Bruce Wayne, can I get a grant? And he's like, huh. And then he talks to Vicky Vale, and then Alfred comes in, and he's like, oh, we need this, and somebody says they want a menu, and we need some more wine or champagne for the party. And give Knox a grant. And then he like walks off. And the fact that you get this impression that Alfred there's a lot more going on with that character than you actually see. He's not just the guy that brings him the fishy soie. He's not the guy that, you know, just puts the suit away or, you know, whatever.
Dusts the mantelpiece. He's the guy who lets Vicky into the Batcave.
He's the guy. But he's
a wingman.
You know, Alfred calls and he says Miss Vale is going to cancel, and then he's like, oh, okay, that's great. Wait a minute, I'm not meeting Vicky today. And
he's also the guy who Vicky's like, oh, I'll see you guys when you get back. What do you mean? We're not going anywhere.
And you have to wonder, did he do that on purpose?
Oh, no. If he knew, he would have totally played into that and maybe gone after Val Kilmer. Like, what are you telling her?
But
why isn't she moving in tomorrow?
I liked that dynamic. I did like the dynamic.
I didn't like how their relationship started with him hooking up with a drunk her. It's like, come on.
Oh,
come
no,
on,
I'm
Bruce.
talking about the Alfred-Bruce dynamic.
Yeah.
Like
I'm shifting over to just that night.
I love the Michael
morning.
Goff Alfred. I love the Michael Caine Alfred. I love the Jeremy Irons Alfred. I even don't mind the Alfred on Gotham, Sean Pertwee, I believe his name is. I kind of dig where Alfred has been going over time. But this was kind of like one of the first big impressionable kind of cinematic or live action Alfreds. I mean, since the 66 one, right? And I thought it hit it out of the park. So that's me.
Talking about side characters, I liked Vicky Vale. She was good. She used what she had to get sort of what she wanted, and she was very sincere and genuine, I felt. But Ali Knox, like, he can just go away now. He can get out of the film.
He's a stand-up comedian, and you can tell that they were like, say some funny stuff.
His voice, it sounded like I was watching Ghostbusters. I was like, whose voice is this? It sounds so familiar to one of them, but I can't quite place which one, and it just seems so out of place with everybody else's voice, as odd as that sounds.
He was very chipper and very sort of snarky, and as the main sort of comedy piece, because the Joker is supposed to be humorous but like super dark and psychotic, whereas, you know, Ali's the one who's sitting there and like, oh, king of the wicker people, and oh, he must be Bruce Wayne and stuff like that. Those sort of cheesy stand-up jokes,
they don't age
play
well. If you edit the film and sort of just get rid of that character, it'd be slightly better for sure.
But I think he was also trying to impress Vicky, and I think
those I could get behind. Those I could believe a little bit more.
Because there are scenes where he is so much better than that. He's not just doing the cheesy lines, you know. He's worried about Vicky, about Vicky's obsession with Bruce Wayne, and he's like, look, just stick to the work. He's also a little jealous. And when he's given the opportunity to do those more dramatic bits,
he does well. The scene with him putting her in the car and trying to put on his little dust mask, which is going to do nothing for a nerve toxin.
If it's wet, it might actually work.
I didn't see him pee on it. It didn't get wet. Another side character that, pretty much the only other side character, really, Bob.
Bob's so good.
You gotta love Bob. He's Joker's right-hand man.
Number one guy.
His number one guy. And even when the Joker is being super creepy and sexual about it, he's just standing there like, thank you, sir. May I have another?
The level of commitment he brings to that.
Oh, yeah.
You got it.
You gotta love all of the Joker's henchmen because they are all game for everything the Joker's doing. They're like, this shit is fun. And quite frankly, it would be. They get to finger paint. They get to play music at work. I don't get to play music at work. It's dangerous. They're playing with guns and they get music at work. There's a Batman sneaking around. He's a ninja. You gotta be paying attention, but they're allowed music anyway. And speaking of the Joker breaking random art, when Bruce Wayne is in Vicky Vale's apartment and Joker bursts in and he grabs the fire poker and smashes one of her vases and like, come at me, bro. It's like, whoa, dude, this is her apartment. You just smashed her vase. I know you're rich and all, but why you gotta be an ass?
I have to ask you, you're saying Val Kilmer. Are you referring to Batman Forever, or are you trying to say Michael Keaton?
I'm trying to say Michael Keaton.
Okay.
I'm terrible with names, which is why I should just stick with the character as opposed to the actor.
Okay, so have you been meaning Michael Keaton the whole time?
I have been.
Okay, so when I was talking about Val Kilmer being a very acrobatic Batman,
I got confused and thought that's the one we were talking about.
And I was talking about Val Kilmer playing Batman in Batman Forever. So for those of you who've been yelling at us,
yelling at me,
15 minutes, cringing and clawing into your palms until blood's showing, we got it. Because I'm not going back and editing that stuff out.
It's the guy who doesn't know the names of half of his own aunts, who could not remember which actor from which Batman it is.
It's long been a discussion. Like, I mean, there's people who used to say, oh, Michael Keaton was a great Bruce Wayne, but not a very good Batman because he wasn't very physical, whereas Val Kilmer was a really good Batman and maybe not as good a Bruce Wayne. And then George Clooney, they kind of liked his Bruce Wayne, but not so much as Batman because it's really weird seeing the Batman cowl, like, shaking because George Clooney used to wobble his head a lot. So when you started talking about Val Kilmer, I just like naturally slipped into that discussion that I've been having with friends and in comic stores for 20 years.
I actually didn't see Val Kilmer as not being an active Batman. Like, of course, he was limited by the by that massive rubber cowl, which
You
must
mean
have
Michael
weighed.
Keaton?
Michael Keaton, I don't see Michael Keaton as not being a physical Batman, although he was, of course, limited by that crazy 40-pound cowl that he had to wear. He did some pretty good acrobatic stuff, or at the very least a stunt actor did, I don't know. But there were some decent fight scenes in there. They had the guy come up with the two swords, and I was expecting actually a Indiana Jones moment where he just batarangs him in the face. But no, he's blocking with all sorts of different guards before eventually giving him one hell of a boot to the face. Or in the fight up in the Belfry fighting Joker's henchman there. There were some good fight scenes going on. And I liked just Nicholson dancing around with Vicky Vale. A lot of the stuff that Nicholson did in this was super great. I actually really enjoy his Joker, and I really like the prosthetics on his face for the acid burns. I initially thought that it was him being dropped into the nerve gas that caused the scars, but no, he was splashed beforehand, and they showed that his face was sort of bubbling up.
He gets the ricochet of the bullet.
He gets something on his face.
Because
I thought there was something that spewed out and hit him in the face.
There's the bullet shot, Batman blocks it, and it ricochets, and it hits him through the cheeks, and then he falls into the chemicals.
I thought it hit like a gauge right beside him and he was splashed with something red, but that red might have been the blood from the ricochet.
I've always assumed it's a ricochet. I could be wrong. If there's a listener out there who knows 100% what it is.
Frame by frame, figure out what special effect was used. But no, I really liked that crazy grin. I found that the fact that it turned all his skin white and his hair green and gave him the lipstick, I'm not entirely sold on that. I'm not sure if I like that or if I dislike that or if I should just stop thinking about it so much.
Well, that's canon. It's canon that the Joker was turned white by the chemicals.
I did appreciate, though, when he said, "My mask is off, how about yours?" I was like, no, it's not, you lying sack of crack, Jack Napier.
And where's the Batman? He's at home, washing his tights. It's probably Alfred with a squeegee. Getting all the sweat out of there.
Just puts it in the dishwasher, sits up.
So we mentioned Anton first. Let's talk about Gotham. Let's talk about the production design, because this was one of the first times that anybody put this much effort on this level, in this medium, on creating this much character for a location. The city of Gotham is a character. It is oppressive.
It feels dank. 30s as hell.
It is 30s as hell. Also kind of modern. They wanted to go for sort of a throwback, but modern,
anachronistic throwback.
So that it was essentially kind of timeless. You couldn't just zero in and be like, oh, everybody's using their cell phones and stuff. Not that there were cell phones, but you look at the cars, and there would always be a classic car and a newer car. That was
you look at the video cameras in Wayne Manor and the ones that he's got behind the giant mirror. Why is there two cameras? And why is the one camera encased in this glass
It looks like
dome?
a slide projector or something.
It's kind of odd that he had the two cameras there. I can get behind the one camera, and I liked Batman sitting there in front of all of the different monitors trying to figure out what's going on. And it didn't even feel super outdated.
Did you notice how touchy-feely Commissioner Gordon was? It's something my friend Brad and I, he's one of my oldest friends, and we've seen this movie a million times. Every time we watched it, Gordon would always put his arm around his officers, and he'd always be squeezing their arms and their shoulders and be like, oh, okay, let's go. He's a very affectionate commissioner, I feel.
That would get him in trouble these days.
Anyways, you were talking about the cameras.
It didn't feel too old, and I feel that it aged well. And yeah, setting anything as a sort of a period piece, and this one's sort of half period piece, half not period piece, and that sort of inscrutable quality that it has really helps it out in the long run.
Did you really like the new kind of gothic German expressionistic vibe for Gotham, or do you think it was overdone? You said in the opening sequence where they show Gotham City and they've got the title card, you were like, looks kind of like the underworld. I took that as you sort of dug it.
As far as I'm concerned, that means that they were going for something and they nailed it. They were going for this aesthetic, this look, and they hit it. And even coming back years from now, seeing it again, it's not like, okay, we're filming this and we have whatever it is, and whether it ages or not, you don't care. When you create something this specific, this particular, it'll always have that special feeling to it where it doesn't go wrong because there was a purpose to it. There was a point. They gave the city a personality as opposed to just having set design. And that personality will always be there. It's timeless to give a city, a stage, a personality.
It was very unique at the time, and it's been copied relentlessly, endlessly since. There's the tragedy involved as well, which if you want to learn some sad things after winning the Academy Award. When Anton first won the Academy Award for art direction, the success, the pressure, I think he was probably already a troubled human being, and kind of got too overwhelming for him, and he took his life. That was a super sad thing, reaching kind of like the pinnacle of his craft. And
same thing happened to Elvis. Couldn't handle the fame. Lots of celebrities can't handle the fame, and still we chase after them and drive them crazy, or drive them into a steel barrier like Princess Di.
I think it will be impossible. It should be impossible to talk about this film without talking about the music, because there's one side to the music that is considered legendary, and there's one side of the music that is controversial. The legendary, of course, is the Danny Elfman score. This was, he came from freaking Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure to create one of the most...
And probably season 73 of The Simpsons.
No, he just did the theme song for The Simpsons. Alf Clausen does the music for The Simpsons. But he went on from those movies to make one of the most iconic film scores ever. It's as recognizable to Batman as Superman is to Superman, as Star Wars or Jaws is to Jaws. It's right up there. It's been copied a million times. And then there's the Prince soundtrack, which there are people like myself who think it is highly underrated and actually a really impressive album. And then there's those people who are like, this really didn't work and it really doesn't fit. I think Prince's music actually gets folded into the film nicely. Tim Burton wasn't really comfortable with all of it. He was like, I like the music just fine, but it's kind of weird to shoehorn it in. I like that orchestral and sort of pop rock R&B blending. Like, I don't know, it works for me. Somehow it works for me. And I know how you feel about music, and I'm really curious how you feel about these two disparate yet commingling. And
I feel the exact opposite of apparently the critics, because Danny Elfman's score I cannot remember right now, and I just saw the film like 2 hours ago. I don't even. Yeah, that's the thing. I've been trying to. I've been trying to ask myself, was that actually in the film that I just saw, or did that come in a later film? I honestly don't know. It was just sort of there. But the Prince stuff, I actually really enjoyed, and I normally don't like music coming in like that in a film, but because the Joker was doing it on purpose, bringing music into these random spots,
the boombox,
it felt so purposeful and it melded so great. It really fit his personality, and I loved it for that. I loved a lot of what the Joker did with the sound design of the world around him, because he was the one influencing it. When he dies at the end and you have that just laugh track playing out of his jacket, it's like, that is perfect.
I never really thought about that. Whether it's the Beautiful Dreamer music, whether it's the Prince music, whether it's the Laughing Box, like, yeah, the Joker...
He created his own soundtrack.
He really did.
Screw you, Danny Elfman. I got other shit to do.
He kind of had his own sound design and having his dudes around, and like he was creating his environment as he went.
He was trying to create the world of his dreams, his homicidal artistic vision, and he was bringing that with him.
Not this one, Bob. I kind of like it.
Poor Bob, though, gets shot for just no reason.
No reason.
Why did nobody tell me he had one of those things?
That just happened to have the industrial wire clippers in the front.
The thing is, they also happen to have the 4 slots for the 4 balloons to just perfectly pinch. Like, come on. But if we're going to talk about stupid things there, he's coming up in the Batwing. He's shooting everybody. He's just killing everyone en masse. And I appreciate that this is a Batman who kills people. And he gets the target lock on the Joker, and he's firing with the 2 machine guns and misses him. He fires the rockets and misses him. And then the Joker comes up with the comically large gun barrel, which really, it helps with your targeting, I guess, maybe? But it's going to slow it down because there's going to be extra friction in there. And he shoots down the Batwing with a single bullet. I'm calling such BS on that. That was dumb.
We need a shenanigans button.
There was shenanigans happening. That whole thing, it's like, oh, he's in the Batwing, but we got to get him down somehow. How do we do this? I don't know. He shoots him down? That's dumb. Best idea we got, whatever. What can you do?
Apparently there was a writer's strike at the time, and there were things that were decided on. Trying to think. Alfred letting Vicky into the Batcave. That was something Tim Burton decided. And there was another thing that Tim Burton decided on the set that he wanted. Damn, it's on Wikipedia if you're interested, like, go check it out. But it was either Warren Scarron or Sam Hamm kind of said, there was a writer's strike, the writers weren't allowed to do anything, and they were just making changes sort of how they saw fit. So I think some of those, like, gag moments could very well have just been Tim Burton going, hey, here's a crazy idea.
And then no one can say no because he's the director. And it's not like producers often have better ideas. Sometimes they do.
I don't think it's tonally wrong for the film, because the whole film, as I said, it's very theatrical, it's very Sturm und Drang, it's very...
Speaking of theatrical, though, when they finally do touch on the Batman origin story, I appreciate that Vicky Vale's doing some research on Bruce Wayne, just stalking him around until they figure out, oh wait, this was the alley where his parents got killed. And the Waynes are very private figures. They're like, who's this Wayne guy? Nobody knew. He wasn't like a big millionaire playboy.
That's so different from
what we're used to, where everybody knows about him.
It's like the most famous case in Gotham history.
Exactly. And then they have that little montage where it's all quiet. They have the slow motion, the music playing as Bruce Wayne's parents are killed, and the pearls drop and the popcorn drops. And then there's Jack Napier doing the "Do You Dance with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight?"
That was the change. That was the other change. In the comic books, it was Joe Chill who killed Batman's parents. Tim Burton was like, wouldn't it be cool if it was the Joker, a young Joker? And the writer did not approve.
But the writer wasn't allowed to work that day. I don't think
when
that
the writer's
didn't
away,
work.
the director will play.
I don't think it didn't work, or that it was bad or anything like that. It was just a
works
thing.
in context of the film. It just wasn't comic book canon. So there were some people who were like,
Well, what is the comic book canon for Batman? There's a lot of different Batman comic book canons.
Yeah, there was 50 years up to that point.
Is he medieval Batman? Because that's comic book canon.
I find that really heartening that you actually really dug the Prince music. that stood out.
It's rare. Like, I don't even like
rare.
Prince. I don't like his music in general, but it worked.
It's a really cool little concept album. It's classic weirdo Prince, where he really, some of it is sung as the character of Bruce Wayne, and some of it is sung as the character of the Joker, and he does a song where he sings as Vicky Vale, and it's a little weird. But he really committed to it. He really committed to it, and
I do appreciate a good concept album.
Yeah. So what else is there to talk about this movie? You really dig Val Kilmer's Batman?
Michael Keaton, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I really dig Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Normally, when it comes to Jack Nicholson, I expect him to be Jack Nicholson. I was actually coming into this film like Jack Nicholson as Jack Nicholson wearing Joker costume. No, he was not. He was committed, and he was excellent. I was actually very pleasantly surprised at 95% of the things that he did as the Joker.
That's actually something, that we could probably... the theme, I guess, in a way, or a way to kind of describe everybody's approach to this thing. Like, everybody committed 110%. Prince committed, Danny Elfman committed, Burton committed, the writers committed, the actors committed. Like, it doesn't, in my mind, necessarily all hold together. I think there is a narrative in there that could be massaged a little more than it is.
They could probably edit 15, 20 minutes out, tighten it up.
But absolutely,
and it'd be perfect.
Everybody is like, they're there. They're like, I am in Gotham City. I am this comic book character. I'm not just cashing a check. I'm not embarrassed to be here. They were taking it seriously, and they were doing it. And I think that's why the movie hit the way it did. And even Tim Burton, I'm going to bring up the quote. I'm not sure if he said it in an interview or if he said it in one of the audio commentaries.
Or if he mumbled it in his sleep while somebody was listening. You can never tell with the likes of TMZ around.
So even Tim Burton commented on this film that he liked parts of it, but the whole movie is mainly boring to me. It's okay, but it was more of a cultural phenomenon than a great movie. And I have to say I agree, because there's things I like about it. It's okay. I'll go back to it. It's entertaining, but it happened, I think, at a time and a place in history, in a cultural spot where something like this hadn't existed for a long time. It just had everybody's curiosity, and it was big stars, and everybody was like, oh, how is Jack Nicholson going to be the Joker? And how is Michael Keaton going to be Batman? And Kim Basinger was a big star at the time, and Tim Burton was up and coming. Everybody loved Beetlejuice. And it's like all this crazy stuff, and they're doing this comic book character, and they were doing it much more dark and much more adult. They were like, we are not making this movie for children. This is a movie aimed at adults. And that got everybody interested. And watching it now, it feels a little campy and theatrical and like a bit of a goofy freak show. But at the time, it still kind of had all that gothic theatrical stuff to it. But it was considered super dark and super mature. And like, this is the most serious anybody has ever dealt with a superhero ever.
Remember, this is around a time when Mortal Kombat was considered like the most violent thing in the whole world.
There was the mod where you can get like the blood.
The Genesis had it where you could have blood. The Super Nintendo, the blood was removed. Craziness.
So I think that's interesting. And this is a landmark film.
And I think it actually lives up a lot better than you guys seem to think it is. You and Tim Burton apparently think it's sort of an average film. I think it's, A- B+. It's above average. This is a better film than you guys are giving it credit for.
Oh, it is above average. I'd give it a B. I'd definitely give it a B.
It'd definitely be worth another viewing at some point, for sure. For
and
funsies.
There is stuff. It is the, proto... There's things in there that, had they not done that then, the way that they did it, a lot of the stuff that sort of came out of that might not have come out the way it did. So it's interesting to watch as an artifact. It's interesting to watch as a lot of different things. I'm just not sure if it's super compelling as a story.
As a story, maybe not. I do enjoy, once again, the Joker's desire to change the world to a bit more of what he sees, and his anger with the Batman getting the press instead, thus forming his rivalry instead of the whole Joker needs the Batman thing that we have sort of going on nowadays. If I compare it to other superhero films in the last 30 years here, I think it's as good, if not better, than a lot of them, especially after all of the Avengers hoo-ha we've been having.
Oh, dude, I will sit down and watch this again with you tomorrow before I will watch Avengers Endgame again.
Not even the new edit that they're re-releasing?
It's not even new stuff in the movie. It's stuff they're putting after the credits or something.
What about the edited version that some psycho did online where he removes all the feminist stuff and all the gay stuff? So there's no men showing any affection, and Captain Marvel's completely edited out, and all that fun stuff.
It's not hard to edit Captain Marvel out. She appears for 2 minutes.
And then doesn't use the glove when she frickin' should have.
She's like, hey
Let's
guys.
hand it to somebody who'll die if he uses it. Okay, that's good ideas.
I can solve your problems right now, but I got stuff to do somewhere else.
Though I do agree with her that, dude, there's a lot of other places with this shit going on, and they don't have the Avengers. So stop asking me to solve all your problems.
That was a really good line.
Still, Batman, better than Endgame. I believe that's what we're landing on here. At the end of Endgame, I was angry at a whole lot of things, especially the time travel BS that they messed up on hardcore. Batman, I've got very little to really complain about. There's some pacing issues at the beginning. Whatever. At the end of the day, I was amused. There's a lot of good stuff in it. Very pleasantly surprised.
There was a critic who said that it was very entertaining. It had some problems with focusing maybe a little bit more on the Joker than on Batman. I think he thought that it moved a little bit slow, and then said, but the best thing that came out of Batman was it led to Batman Returns. And
which I'm suddenly more interested in seeing again now because I haven't seen that one in 15 years or so.
And you have to bear in mind that because Warner Brothers was taking a gamble on this movie, they were really paying attention. They hired all of these people who were sort of going against type, except for maybe Jack Nicholson, because Michael Keaton was known as a comedy actor. Tim Burton was known as a comedy director, doing like all this weird cartoony stuff with stripes. And they put a lot of money into this, and they were taking a gamble. It was bonkers successful. It broke the records that Ghostbusters 2 had set the previous week. Warner Brothers went, we want another one. Tim Burton said, okay. And they were like, do what you want. So the next movie actually is more like honestly a Tim Burton movie. And it feels more like a Tim Burton movie. And there's some subtle differences just in like the texture of the film.
The taste, the mouthfeel.
It just has this crispness to it and weirdness to it. Again, Batman Returns is not a great film, but I enjoy going back to it more than I enjoy going back to this.
Let me tell you about this guy I know, Jack. Mean kid, bad seed, hurt people. I like him already. Yeah, the problem was he got sloppy. Crazy. He started to lose it. He had a head full of bad wiring, I guess. Couldn't keep it straight up here. He was the kind of guy who couldn't hear the train till it was 2 feet from him. You know what happened to this guy, Jack? Well, made mistakes. And then he had his lights out. Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
What?
I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. Never rub another man's rhubarb.
So this is a solid B for me, and this is a solid A-, B+ for Dustin. We would love to know what you guys think of this film or any of the other films that we have covered in our Summer of '89 series. That's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, Ghostbusters 2, and Tim Burton's Batman 1989.
Or which films you're like, dude, why the heck didn't you do this one? This is Summer of '89 all over it. To which, of course, the answer is Mike wasn't excited about it, but still.
It is all about me. So yeah, let us know on our social media. Catch us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Where else are we? We're on WordPress. You can send us an email at fycshowmail@gmail.com. All the other social media, where you just search for your consideration, FYC Show. One of those two will lead you to all of those things and usually link to the other things. Did I say Instagram? I don't know if I said Instagram. We're on Instagram too. Posting there somewhat regularly. If you want to support the show, spread the word. Spread the word. Subscribe to us, like us, follow us on all the social media, on the podcasting delivery platforms and stuff like that.
You can even ignore us afterwards.
You can. You can share us on your social media so that other people know that we're out there and that you are enjoying the programming. Word of mouth is a great way to get words out with your mouth. We also have the Patreon account, the Patreon campaign. So if you want to support the show in a more robust way, in a more financial way, you can go there. We've got different levels from like $1 to I think $15 or $20, and there's different rewards associated with those levels.
Help us move out of our mom's basement.
Throw us some scratch. Helps keep the lights on. Helps us develop stuff. Helps us get stuff out more regularly. Helps us feel good about ourselves. Helps us know we're loved.
Helps us feel professional, and thus hold ourselves to a higher standard.
And that pretty much brings us to a close. I don't really have anything else.
Except that next time, if all goes according to plan, we should be completing our Lord of the Rings trilogy with special guest cast.
Trilogy?
Prelogue?
Yeah, she was like, guys, third movie.
There have been threats. There's lots of shouting. You check out the text history I have with her, and there's lots of shouting at me about who is the king. and returning with rings and kings.
So we're hoping to get that done. We're hoping that's going to be the first episode post Batman, post Summer of '89, and we'll probably have the next episode figured out by then. We've actually got a couple of guests that have been expressing interest out of the blue, so you might have some more voices to listen to than just Dustin and my dulcet tones. So until then, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed all 4 movies, or any single one would make me happy. Until next week, keep fit, play safe,
and auf Wiederhören.
Keep bust.
Ciao.
And where is the Batman?
And later on, the fight scene with the corrupt cops in the top of the belfry there, while Joker's dancing around.
You mean the Joker's henchmen?
They looked like they were wearing cop uniforms.
Pretty sure they were wearing their Joker uniforms.
Well, they looked pretty official. I was like, when did corrupt cops get up here?
Nope, those are all Joker's henchmen.